Hey guys, welcome back. For those of you who haven't seen this project yet or been on my channel, this is the project. It's a 2010 Camaro SS, a 2SS if that matters. The goal with this project was to double the horsepower from around 350 rear wheel horsepower to 700. So I did the L99 to LS3 conversion. I have other videos on my channel showing that. I have a video showing all the parts that I've utilized with part numbers and pricing. So you can kind of use this as a recipe to do this if that's what you're trying to do. Double your horsepower. This video is going to be the Whipple install, and I'm probably going to run this video right to the end with it actually running and getting on the dyno at Genetti. But we'll see. I might break it up one more time just because it takes a lot of time to get there. So right now, I already have the inner fender wells out. The front bumper cover has to come off to get to the intercooler and a bunch of other items. The Supercharger kit is in. It came 4 weeks early, which is awesome, so I can get a jump on it now. The instructions are super clear. I almost don't even need to make this video, but I figured anybody curious before they even buy the kit, they can see what it takes. So the front fascia has to come off. I got the inner fender wells out, like I said. It's pretty straightforward. You got some screws down low. On each end, you got some screws here, 3 of them. There were 3 screws here. And then you have some of those plastic push buttons that you have to pry out. I bought the tool a long time ago to pry these out square so you don't snap them off. Just buy the tool. It makes it so much easier. I'll show you what it looks like. This guy right here. I've had this for a long time, and I've used it a lot more than I thought I ever would. I use it not just for plastic fasteners, but all kinds of things. It comes in really handy. So now to get this front bumper cover off, there's 1 screw up here. The wiring harness you don't have to worry about. I have this unplugged, the fog light, because it's not a fog light. It's a daytime running light, and it drives me nuts that it stays on. So I unplugged that a long time ago. Underneath, you got these 2 bolts that I still have to take out. Right there and right there. Passenger side fender wells out. It's the same thing as the driver's side. Two screws down here. Those push button plastic fasteners. 1, 2. I believe there was 1 more over here, but you'll see them. 1 on the strut tower. Same deal. You got to take this screw out. And then the main harness, see if I can get it to focus, is right here. I already have it unplugged. You unplug the main harness and leave everything else. The harness on the bumper will come off with the bumper. And then here's a quick peek of I already unboxed it and have everything laying on the bench. So here's the blower itself, which has to come apart for the install. And here's all the accessories that come with it, all the wiring, all the hoses, fuel line. There's a bunch of things that I was going to buy. I was going to replace the heater hoses, and I almost bought GM ones. I'm glad I didn't. It actually comes part of the kit. It comes with brand new heater hoses, the fuel rails, fuel lines, that's all going to change. These are pretty trick. All aluminum, 1 piece. Looks super cool. You inject the fuel rails. So I'll get all that in there, all the pulleys, pulley bracket. But as I'm going along here, I'll capture as much as I can so you guys can see it. It's a very nice kit. It's laid out well. I actually ended up getting an MSD booster pump. I didn't think I was going to get that because I bought a JMS pump. JMS voltage booster. That's going to be coupled with the ZL1 fuel pump. That was recommended by Genetti, so I'm not sure why I got that. I guess it just comes with the kit, so I'm not going to utilize that. All right, so I got the car on the ground. There was 1 10-millimeter bolt here. Then you have your push pins in the front. Pretty self-explanatory. You pop those out. And then 1 10-millimeter bolt on the other side. So this bumper cover is ready to come off. Literally with one hand. I mean, I kind of wish I took this off when I did the engine with the cherry picker. Instead of having the cherry picker right up against the bumper cover, I should have popped it off. I didn't know it was that easy. All right, so I got a little ahead of myself. I'll just explain what I've done so far. This kit, the instructions aren't the best. What they do have in there is pretty good with the pictures, but there's been so many revisions that I think the last one was 2010. I'm sorry, 2020, so it's 4 years ago. There's already some components that have changed. There's some things that are left out. So I've been kind of going back and forth with Whipple and trying to source those out. But I'll just tell you what I got done so far. So after I took the front bumper off, I put the pins in the crank, which that's in the instructions. That's pretty straightforward. It comes with the pin kit. The next thing they had me do was add the relay and the fuse for the intercooler pump. The pump's not installed yet, so those leads are just hanging. But the ground for this relay comes off the main stud. So you can see the new cable right here running along the chassis. Then the power is fed through this box. So the main power that's going to go to the pump through that relay is from this main stud right here. That's your heavy wire. And then your accessory is right here. It's like one of those piggyback fuse holders. So that's to trigger the relay. So it's accessory power that clicks over the relay and then gives battery power right to the pump. Another thing you got to do is you got to trim the edge of the box right here. And it doesn't say to do it, but you do have to do it. Trim the inside also so that it can go over these wires and this box can close. So that wasn't too bad. The next thing I did, you have to actually split you'll see the lower intake's on, but you have to split the lower intake from the supercharger itself. So just to get an idea, this is what it looks like. There's the liquid intercooler. It's a pretty trick. The quality is really good. I mean, all the aluminum work and welding. I had a couple of questions that these bolts weren't in here in the back on both sides. And they say that those bolts are supposed to be left out. I don't know. I think that's a little suspect, but they say they're not supposed to be there. It is rigid. It is bolted in there, but I kind of question that. So I split that, and then next thing I did was put the plugs in that they recommended. So I got those plugs in. After that, it does say to glue the gaskets to the head, which I did. So what I bought was this gasket cinch. Edelbrock makes some. You do want to do this because the gasket will fall on you. It will drop. It doesn't hold itself. It doesn't line up. It has to be stuck onto the head. So you can align the gasket up. You put that gasket cinch on the head. You put it on the gasket. Let it dry for about 5 minutes. And then you can place it and center it in the port, in the bolt holes, and it'll hold itself. But then the lower intake also has O-rings on the bottom. They also want you to put those in. So it has O-rings that are going flush against that gasket, and then you torque them down. The injectors I installed with the fuel rail. So I have the, what do I have here? I didn't use the injectors that came with it. Giannetti recommended the ID 1050s. So that's what's in there. So the ID 1050s are in the rail. That was pretty straightforward. They fit nice and snug. Just to get an idea how this bracket fits. The mounting bracket's on the back side. And you'll see the intake bolts. The intake bolt for these brackets are the beveled ones. And then instead of the cap head, which is all the other ones. But that part was pretty straightforward, getting the injector rails together. I put those on the intake before I even put the intake on the engine, so that was already done. I just installed the coil packs. Those are all wired. The injectors are wired. I added the oxygen sensor extensions BBK, because it also installed long tube headers. So that's on there. What else we got? The heater core hoses. This is something that's not even in the instructions, but it came with brand new hoses, so obviously you got to use them. Getting the old ones out, that was fun. I really wish I did it when the engine was out. It would have been a lot easier. I kind of figured I was just going to reuse them, and I wasn't really thinking until I got the kit, saw that they were in there. Then I'm like, what am I thinking? That the OEM ones go right over the old intake, so it's definitely not going to work. So you buy this kit, know that those have to come off. So when you got these coil packs off, and if you're doing the L99 and LS3 conversion at the same time, you're going to have the heads off and maybe even the engine out, which I recommend. You'll have the room to get to those clamps. So that was kind of a bear with the head on. But yeah, so that's where I stand right now. Another thing, the steam port crossover tube, it shows a hard line on the instructions. I don't think they made instructions yet with this newer hose, but that's how that's set up. And then this will have a bobbed fitting on it to go to the radiator. So that was a little bit of a tricky one. It's very tight. These bolts, there's actually bolts that go from underneath to the intake. I got to figure out how I'm going to get those with the wiring harness in place, but we'll see. I'm going to take it from here. I'm going to get the blower prepped, and that's my next stop. All right, so that's an awesome sight right there. I mean, this thing looks awesome. It's a lot bigger. It sits a lot higher than I thought it was going to sit, but it looks wicked. So what I did was, while it was on the bench, a couple things you want to be really cautious of. You want to make sure everything you're going to do underneath that cowl behind the supercharger is done. Once this thing's bolted down, you can't get your hands back there. It's super tight. So I added the intercooler hoses to the supercharger, which you're going to kind of decipher on your own which one's which. So this is the one that's going to go down to the pump. It's going to go right about here to a coolant tank or an intercooler tank, and then it's going to tee down to the pump. It'll go through the intercooler, right through here. See how this wing is there? This wing is missing. So this line right here is gonna end up coming out of here, hooking up to the intercooler, and then this line's gonna run along the passenger frame rail, right into the back of the heat exchanger, or the liquid intercooler. So you want those hooked up before you drop this. I did add the oil before I installed it. The biggest thing you have to do, it shows it in the instructions, this cowl right here, see how tight that is, and it's actually dropped down. So the liquid intercooler that's bolted to the bottom of this, which I showed previously, it sits about that far lower than the actual supercharger, so it sits down into the lower intake. So while you're first putting this thing in, trying to get it in, you have to get that heat exchanger into the lower intake for it to finally drop and go down. So you're coming in at an angle. You get to the point where the back of the supercharger, which some of this right now is under the cowl, you end up hitting. You can't get it. And you don't want to jam it, because the edges of the mounting surface of the bottom of the supercharger, they're sharp. And you'll end up cutting the O-ring that's on the lower intake. So you don't want to force it. You're just going to cause issues. So what I did was I took out these push pins so that I could pry up on the plastic, so I could see what the steel looked like right there. And you can see how it's kind of banged up, because that's exactly what I did. So I put a chisel in between the plastic and the steel to hold it up. I took the blower back out because I knew I had to force it and I didn't want to. So I put it back on the bench and I whacked it with a dead blow in 3 spots a couple of times. You're only going to get about 1/4 of an inch out of it, if that. And then I actually was able to stand on the front bumper. Even though it's a little rusty right there, it actually still is solid. I'm either going to replace this or paint it before I put it back on. So you can stand on that as a step. And then I ended up putting 1 foot in the passenger well, another foot right down there on the part of the frame. And I was able to grab it, no problem. You're right over it. One person, it was easy. I picked it up, got the weight right off of it, slid it right in. So it's landed. I haven't torqued down any of the bolts yet. I'm gonna do that next. Trying to think what else I could think of. It's pretty straightforward. The instructions, like I said, they're good. It's just some of the revisions here and there, and they left out a couple of vehicle-specific things, like the heater core lines, because I know they use these blowers on so many different cars. They're pretty universal. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to torque the supercharger down. After that, I'm probably going to get the throttle body mounted up and then start running the intercooler lines. I want to do the throttle body, just don't have to leave the hole open. It's either that or I'm going to tape it up and start running all the intercooler piping, which requires this front bumper to come off, or the bumper brace to come off to mount the intercooler. And while that's off, I can wire wheel this thing and paint it. So another thing I noticed as I'm putting these bolts in to torque it down, I can show you a couple things. One thing is, to get to that bolt right there is not fun. And second, see the fuel rail. The clearance between that and the jack shaft gearbox, there isn't much. And I set these injectors pretty low. So one thing to think of when you're putting the fuel rail together and you're setting the height on that lower intake, goes, I don't want to say as low as you can go, but you definitely want to go low enough. Because I think another, I don't know, about 1/4 of an inch right there, I would have been hitting. All right, so I made some more progress. I got the jack shaft cover on. So I'm working my way from the back to the front, and I'm working down low and up. So anything that I need to get to at the bottom, I want to get to that now, because once I get all these hoses in place and the intercooler fillet in place, you're not gonna be able to get your hands down there. So you can't really see it on this side, but I got all the spark plug wires in. I ran Taylor wires. The part number's in the parts video I have on here. I got the fuel rail plumbed. All the wirings ran forward. What else do I got? The purge solenoid, I got that hooked up. This is a little tricky just because there's not a lot of real estate over here. I'm still working on the other end. But I got the purge valve back in. You have to clock it a hair this way. And here's this in the other video I was explaining instead of using the hard line, it came with this soft AN line. There's just not a lot of room. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of a battle to get that on there, but this needs to be indexed. So I had to reach out to Whipple because they didn't have this in the instructions, and he sent me a picture of it assembled, and it actually had this pointing this way, and obviously you can't hook the hose up because the purge solenoid's in the way. So I can tell you right now that this is working. This is how you want it indexed. You want that purge solenoid standing up a little bit. It usually leans over that way more, and you want this vent pointing straight up. You want it straight up anyway just to get the air out of there, but you actually have no choice. I mean, it's pretty hard up in between the purge solenoid and the fuel line. It's about as tight as it gets. So I got that hooked up. Show you the passenger side. Same deal. It's actually nice. It's a lot cleaner over here. You can see all the wires are in. So I did do the same thing on the passenger side. And then now I'm starting to put the nipples in. So this is for the purge solenoid. This is for the PCV vent. So this one goes from here to the vent in the back of the head. That utilizes a brand new line. And then this will be the brake booster line. That's brand new too. So it'll be a push to connect, and then that'll come over to the original nipple on the brake booster. So those will be these two are new lines, and this one's actually utilizing the hard line. That has to be kind of bent and twisted into place. Guess I can do it now, like that. The throttle body I'm trying to get on. I'll just show you the jack shaft, and the pulley is going to be right here. So you can't can't have anything protruding this direction. There's actually nothing in the instructions about the throttle body. It shows you taking it off the old one. It has absolutely nothing talking about putting either a new throttle body or your existing throttle body back on. So I just been looking at pitches. This guy's has a lot of oxidation, but I mean, it was running and driving when I took it apart. So this has to get clocked. So you spin it in the other direction so that the actual servo motor for the butterfly itself is facing that way. And then the connector will also be facing the driver's side. So I did some digging. I was going to reach out to Whipple again, but it kind of takes a little while to get a response. But all the pitches are conclusive. And plus, if I wanted to bolt this on this way, I couldn't, even if I wanted to. So I'm going to do that next. Get this clocked. I'm going to try cleaning it up. Clock it. It does come with the adapters for a 91 millimeter, which is the factory, and 112 millimeter. I'm just going to stick with the factory one for now. Giannetti didn't spec anything larger, so I guess it's not required. Here's the fillet. I'm also going to mount that so I can get the hose from the back of the engine to the fillet complete, and then I can do the heater hoses, and that's pretty much going to wrap up this whole side of the engine. The passenger side, it's just going to be, I mean, full of hoses. So the heater hoses, I'm going to try dropping down, get these as neat as I can, and then the fillet actually mounts kind of right by the oil dipstick in the filler. It lands right about here. And wherever that lands, I can now stop plumbing down to the pump, mount the pump, the intercooler. I'll get that system done and keep on chugging. Just wanted to show you one thing under the intake. So where that bypass actuator is, you can see that arm right there. It's very tight. So you just want to be super patient. You don't want to crimp any lines or kink any lines. Break that actuator. You don't want that to be held up because that's your bypass. So when this throttle body slams shut under boost, that'll open up and it won't overpressurize your intake with the supercharger. Like I said, it'll help with surging also, but it's super tight down there. You just want to take your time. And you can see the fuel line goes from rail to rail. And then in the back, it's the same thing. It goes rail to rail. I can't show you that. It's stuffed back there. And then this is your main fuel coming in. All right, so I got everything wired. Everything's plumbed up. I got the cold air intake in, the cold air inductions. I'm gonna end up painting that black. I'm also gonna paint this this black striker plate, and then this front radiator support again, just because it looks a little beat up. Engine wise, everything's good to go. I got all the tensioner, the belts on. The instructions call for 2 inches between here and here for tension. I'm totally maxed out, and I was probably like 1 3/4 inches, but I'll see what Giannetti says when I bring it to him, see if that's good. The coolant, burping that was pretty easy. I just topped it off, kept topping it off, and then just turned the ignition key on. It stopped pumping it down, shut the key off before it got to the bottom. I just kept doing that over and over again, and finally it's been maintaining its level between min and max, so I'm good there. Transmission fluid's good to fire. Oil is good. Coolant, I gotta burp that once I get it going. But yeah, I'm pretty much ready to fire this guy up. Front mount's on. I'm gonna keep the bumper off it, threw the plate on it, pull it outside. I'm gonna keep the bumper off until I take it for a few trips around the block, just to make sure it's not leaking anything. All right, the tune's written. I'm gonna fire it up for the first time and see what happens. Should be interesting. right, so this is the factory L99 resonator. You can see I chopped it out. So what I did was I cut it as close to the resonator as I could, so I'd have plenty of pipe to work with. And then I bought this Jegs from Jegs. I mean, everybody, there's a couple of companies that sell these. It seems like they're just rebranding the same pipe, but so it's a resonator eliminator with HP X pipe, 2.5 inch, 30428. So I bought that pipe, and what I did was, that's about how much I cut off of this X pipe, and I'll show you why. So underneath the car, I already have it installed, and there's the X pipe, and what I did was I added 2 Dynamax bullets, and then right back to the factory pipe. So where those Dynamax bullets are is the part that I cut out. And one thing I'll say is the width of this X pipe, because it was taking up the factory resonator, the width is pretty narrow. So you can see that I had to persuade the bullets a little bit. So the shell itself, I just hammered them down so that they could squeeze in enough to be able to fit. You look in the pipe, you don't see anything dented. It's just the outer jacket just flattened one side on both of them, and then sandwiched them together. I put a ratchet strap around this end to pull it as tight as I could, and I was able to slip this Jegs pipe in. So it came out pretty good. Weld into the old piping. I mean, the welds don't look that great, but these factory slip bands slip right on. Able to position it no problem. It really wasn't that bad to do. And then out back, I still have just the, when I bought the car, they were chopped off right here at the mufflers. And I bought these, this axle back kit. So it's just a 3-inch open kit. So it's pretty old. I was thinking about buying a whole new cat pack, but I figured I would do this for now, just to see how it sounds. This cost me altogether $200, about $225 actually. So see how that sounds.